Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're jumping right back into some entitled people stories. And we've got 3 that each teach the same hard lesson. When you cross a line, the response you get might just redefine what fair means. We're going to compare them at the end, so stick around. She called it neighborhood watch. I called it theft. After she opened my special delivery, the police helped redefine what helpful means. My neighborhood used to be the quiet, friendly kind. We waved, we collected mail for each other on vacation, and nobody gave much thought to porch piracy. That was before Denise. Denise, 2 houses down, is a mom of 3 very energetic kids. She's also a self-appointed neighborhood watch captain and package gatekeeper. It started with a missed delivery. A neighbor's Amazon box for a dog bed was left on her porch by mistake. Instead of walking it over, she knocked on their door and delivered a 5-minute lecture on being more responsible with your delivery notes. But then it became a habit. Any package that even grazed her property line was considered fair game for her investigation. A FedEx guy once left a small box for the Millers on the planter box between our driveways. Denise snatched it, opened it, and then brought the now open box, which contained a personal medical device, to the Millers, chastising them for their indiscreet purchases. The audacity was breathtaking, but everyone was too non-confrontational to do anything. She'd just flutter her hand and say, "I was just trying to help. It could have been stolen." I learned to be hyper-specific with my delivery instructions. Left of red door, on bench, not on porch rail. It worked. Until last Tuesday. I was waiting on a special shipment, a set of handmade Japanese kitchen knives, a birthday splurge I'd saved for all year. The delivery notification said, "Left at front door." My heart sank. My bench was empty, but then I saw the delivery photo. It showed my white porch railing. The driver had ignored the note and just plopped it on the rail, a foot into what Denise considered her visual jurisdiction. I knew before I even walked out my door, the box was gone. I didn't panic. I walked straight to her house. Through her front window, I could see the kids playing in the living room, and on her kitchen counter, plain as day, was my brown box. The tape had been slit open. I knocked. She opened the door with a bright, fake smile that dropped when she saw my face. "Hi, Denise. I think you have a package of mine. The driver left it on my porch railing by mistake. I saw it through the window." Her face flushed. "Oh, that. I was just about to bring it over. I had to check the label, to make sure it was yours. You should really be more careful. Leaving expensive-looking boxes out in the open is just asking for trouble." She made no move to get it. "I appreciate you wanting to help," I said, my voice tight. "But you opened it." "It was already coming open," she lied, her voice rising. "I was just securing it. Honestly, the way you people just order things willy-nilly without thinking of the consequences for the neighborhood. Denise, the box, please." Suddenly, her tone shifted to wounded outrage. She stepped back into her doorway, raising her voice so her kids and the entire street could hear. "Are you accusing me of something? I'm a mother just trying to keep our street safe from thieves. And you're here harassing me at my door, in front of my children. You should be thanking me." Her 2 older kids had stopped playing and were staring at us with wide eyes. She was performing for an audience. "I'm not thanking you for opening my private mail," I said, my patience gone. "That's a federal offense. It's also theft. Give me my property right now, or my next call is to the police to report both." The word police cut through her performance. Her eyes widened with real fear, then fury. "Fine, take your stupid box. I don't want your junk in my house anyway." She stormed to the counter, snatched the open box, and marched back. Instead of handing it to me, she shoved it hard against my chest, so I had to grab it, then tossed the loose packing paper at my feet. The knives inside clattered ominously. "Get off my property, you bully!" she hissed and slammed the door. I stood there holding my violated package, my heart pounding. The curtain in her front window twitched. By that evening, the narrative had been spun. I saw a neighbor give me a strange look while getting his mail. A text from a friendly neighbor a few houses over came through. "Heard you had a blow-up with Denise over a delivery mix-up. She's telling everyone you screamed at her kids and threatened her." That was it. I was done. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I went to the post office and filed a formal complaint for mail tampering. The box had a USPS label for the final leg. I then went to the local police precinct's non-emergency line and filed a report for theft and trespass to chattel. I presented the delivery photo, a photo of my empty porch, and a statement. The officer who had heard similar stories was surprisingly serious about it. By invoking federal mail laws and filing a police report, you changed the game entirely. This was no longer a she said spat between neighbors. It was a documented crime with real-world consequences, which is why it finally pierced her sense of impunity. My final move was technological. I bought a very obvious high-definition doorbell camera and a second, smaller disguised camera that covered the porch railing and the approach from her house. I installed them both that afternoon in plain sight. The police paid Denise a visit later that week. I don't know what was said, but she hasn't looked in my direction since. The neighborhood gossip network, however, is a powerful thing. Once people heard the police were involved, the story shifted. The quiet neighbor who never made waves wouldn't call the cops over nothing. Whispers started about her habit of opening other people's things. Last week, a package for the new family across the street was delivered to her lawn. I watched from my window as she walked out, saw it, looked around furtively, and then, instead of picking it up, she just kicked it off her grass and back onto the street curb before hurrying inside. She didn't touch it. My cameras caught the whole thing. I walked over, picked up the box, and delivered it, unopened, to my new neighbors. They were grateful. "We heard about that lady," the wife said, rolling her eyes. "Thanks for looking out." I just smiled. No problem at all. That's what neighbors do. And our second story. Watched two girls steal, scream insults, and walk out of Dollar Tree. Saw them at my restaurant job 2 hours later interviewing. The universe has a funny sense of timing. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. One is a side job at a Dollar Tree, the kind of place where everything is cheap, margins are thin, and corporate somehow expects miracles out of a minimum staffing. The other job is at a restaurant nearby where I can at least get an employee discount and a break from fluorescent lights and theft statistics. Normally, the 2 worlds never overlap. Today, unfortunately for a pair of very confident shoplifters, they did. I was stocking shelves at Dollar Tree when I noticed 2 girls acting just a little too deliberate in the aisles. You learn to spot it fast in retail. The way they hover, the way they glance around more than they look at products, the way items disappear into bags instead of baskets. They weren't subtle, but they also weren't stealing anything dramatic. A few cosmetics, some snacks, maybe a phone charger, petty stuff. At Dollar Tree, everything is $1.25, so the irony was already baked in. When they headed for the exit, my supervisor stepped in front of the doors and used the script we're allowed to use. Calm voice, no accusations, no touching. "Hey, are you planning to pay for those items before you leave?" That was it. That was the entire interaction. Both girls immediately went nuclear. They started shouting about how my supervisor was a racist a-hole and a B-word, screaming loud enough that customers froze mid-aisle. The absurd part, everyone involved was black. The 2 girls, my supervisor, even a couple of coworkers who wandered over when the noise started. None of that mattered. They kept yelling, calling names, making a scene, clearly banking on the fact that retail employees are legally handcuffed when it comes to petty theft. And they weren't wrong. As anyone who's worked retail knows, unless you're trained loss prevention or security, you're not allowed to physically stop anyone. You can ask, you can document, you can call it in. What you cannot do is touch them. One wrong move and the company gets sued, you get fired, and the shoplifter walks away with a settlement check and a story about being harassed. So they walked out, bags full, smug, victorious. What really stung was that our store has been getting hammered lately. Theft is constant. Regional management keeps writing us about low margins like we're hiding inventory under the registers for fun. We're understaffed, underpaid, and blamed for things we have zero power to stop. Watching 2 people steal less than $5 worth of junk while calling my supervisor racist for doing her job was just another day in the slow erosion of retail sanity. They didn't argue or run. They went straight for the nuclear option, playing the victim. By screaming racist, they tried to hijack the whole situation. It's a power move meant to cause so much chaos and fear that you just let them walk. And it worked. For about 2 hours. A couple hours later, my shift ended. One of my coworkers, who also works at the restaurant where I have my other job, asked if I wanted to grab food. I said sure. I was tired, annoyed, and hungry, which is usually when bad coincidences decide to show up. We walked into the restaurant, ordered, sat down. And that's when my coworker froze mid-sentence. She subtly nodded toward the lobby and said, "You're not going to believe this." Sitting across the room were the same two girls. Same clothes, same bags, same loud energy. I actually laughed under my breath because it felt unreal. Like the universe was setting something up and I wasn't sure yet who the punchline was supposed to be. We started eating, and about 5 minutes later, my manager at the restaurant stepped into the lobby and called out one of the girls' names. Interview? One of the girls stood up and followed him. I slowly put my fork down. A few minutes later, the second girl was called for her interview as well. Same manager, same clipboard, same calm professionalism he gives everyone. They both walked out afterward looking confident, like the job was already theirs. They left the building, probably already planning how they'd spend their first paycheck. That's when I waved my manager over. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't raise my voice. I just told him exactly what had happened less than 2 hours earlier at Dollar Tree. I described the shoplifting, the confrontation, the insults, the fact that they'd walked out with stolen merchandise while screaming abuse at a supervisor who'd done nothing wrong. My coworker backed me up, confirming she'd been there and seen the same thing. My manager listened quietly the entire time, then he sighed, rubbed his forehead, and said, "Thank you for telling me." That was it. No rant, no visible anger, just relief. He told us straight up that hiring is always a gamble, but sometimes the universe hands you free background checks. He thanked us again and said they would not be moving forward with either candidate. No callback, no second interview, no chance to bring that behavior into a workplace that already deals with enough nonsense from customers. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt satisfied, calm, like balance had been restored in the smallest, pettiest way possible. Here's the thing. I don't care that they shoplifted cheap junk. Dollar Tree will survive. I care that they weaponized accusations to dodge accountability, screamed abuse at someone just doing her job, and then immediately tried to step into another workplace like none of it mattered. Actions have consequences, even if they're delayed by a couple of hours and delivered through coincidence instead of karma. Retail workers don't get a lot of wins. We get blamed, threatened, recorded, and stolen from, all while being told to smile and de-escalate. Today just happened to be one of those rare days where someone didn't get away with being awful twice in the same afternoon. They walked out of Dollar Tree thinking they'd beaten the system over $1.25 items. They walked out of that restaurant thinking they'd nailed an interview. Turns out sometimes the universe stocks its own shelves, and occasionally it remembers who tried to steal. The worst part's how easy it is to get away with this kind of thing. They knew exactly what buttons to push and used them without hesitation. People like that don't suddenly become respectful employees because they put on a nicer outfit. If they're willing to blow up over being asked to pay, imagine them dealing with customers on a bad night. And our last story. Entitled neighbors used my property as if it were their own and threatened to sue. This happened back in May, and I still think about it every time I pass that house. I live next to a married couple, and the wife, who I'll call Nora, has one of those gardens people slow down to stare at. I don't mean a couple of polite flowers by the mailbox or a row of shrubs you forget about. Her entire front yard and the left side of her house were layered with plants. Tall, flowering bushes, low ground cover, climbing vines, carefully spaced perennials, and enough color that it looked intentional rather than overgrown. You could tell this wasn't a weekend hobby. It was something she'd been building for years. Across the street lived a family with 2 boys, one around 11 and the other 9. At first, it seemed harmless. You'd see the kids dart across the road, crouch near Nora's garden, and run back with handfuls of flowers. Sometimes they'd be laughing, sometimes arguing over who got the bigger bunch. People joked about it, said it was cute, said the boys were just being boys. That stopped being cute pretty quickly once it became clear it wasn't random or occasional. The kids were picking flowers constantly, not just a blossom or two, but full stems, sometimes entire plants. I watched them strip sections bare in minutes. They'd snap branches clean off shrubs, yank flowers out by the roots, and trample anything in their way to reach the good ones. What really sealed it was when I overheard their mother telling them to go grab flowers because she didn't feel like buying any. She said it loudly, like it was completely normal. Nora tried to handle it politely at first. I know this because I saw her talk to the kids more than once, crouching down and calmly telling them they couldn't pick from her yard. She explained the plants took time to grow and asked them to stop. They nodded, said okay, and went right back to it the next day. Eventually, she went over to talk to their mother directly, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't. From what Nora later told me, the conversation went bad almost immediately. The mother waved her off and said flowers were meant to be enjoyed. She complained that bouquets were expensive and that driving to a store just for flowers was a waste of gas. When Nora pointed out that the kids were damaging her plants, the mother scoffed and said, "You've got more than enough. It's not like you'll miss a few." The word greedy came up more than once. Nora didn't argue. She just told her again that the kids were not allowed in her yard. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. About a week later, right before I left on vacation with my brother, I noticed the garden looked different. Not ruined, not ugly, reinforced. Thorny bushes had appeared in all the spots the kids usually cut through. Firethorn, blackthorn, creeping juniper, all carefully placed, so there was no easy way to reach the flowers without getting scratched to hell. When I asked Nora about it, she smiled and said, "I thought they were beautiful," then added, "I wish them good luck." Nora's talk with the mom proved that words didn't work. The mom wasn't confused. She felt entitled to the flowers, so Nora stopped talking. She planted a polite, beautiful, and painful no in the form of thorny bushes. It was her way of saying the conversation was over. Less than a week after that, the yelling started. I heard pounding on Nora's door and looked out to see the mother standing there with both kids in tow. The boys looked miserable. One had a bandage on his arm, the other on his leg, and their clothes were torn. The mother looked incandescent. Nora barely opened the door before the woman started screaming. She accused Nora of deliberately hurting her children, of creating a dangerous yard, of being cruel and unneighborly. She shoved the kids forward like exhibits in a courtroom, pointing at their scrapes and ripped sleeves. Nora waited until she ran out of steam, then calmly asked, "Why were your kids in my garden?" That's when the tone shifted. The mother stopped yelling and went cold. She said Nora had created a hazard and the kids were allowed to walk through neighborhoods. She claimed the bushes were intentional traps and said very clearly, "If you don't remove those plants, I will sue you." You could practically hear the silence after that. Nora didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She said, "For what exactly?" "For endangering children," the mother snapped, "for damages, for medical bills, for emotional distress." She crossed her arms like she delivered a finishing move. Nora nodded slowly and said, "My yard is private property. Your kids have been told repeatedly to stay out. The plants are legal landscaping. If you'd like to involve a lawyer, feel free. I'll be happy to explain to them why your children were trespassing and stealing." That made the mother furious again. She accused Nora of threatening her, of being heartless, of hating kids. She said the police would side with her. She said the HOA would get involved. She said this neighborhood didn't treat families like this. Nora replied, "There is no HOA, and you're free to call whoever you want." That's when the mother realized she wasn't getting anywhere. She left in a huff, dragging the kids behind her and promising this wasn't over. It was over. The kids stopped crossing the street. No more flowers disappeared. The mother avoided Nora entirely, though she shot dirty looks whenever they passed. A small "no trespassing" sign went up near the garden shortly after. No one touched it. No one complained. Weeks later, I overheard the mother telling someone that Nora was lawyer-happy and dangerous. What she really meant was that Nora didn't fold. Nora's garden looks better than ever now. The thorny bushes blended in perfectly, the flowers recovered, and the space finally feels respected. The kids learned a boundary. The mother learned nothing. And the rest of us learned that sometimes the best response to entitlement isn't yelling or calling the cops. Each of these stories features someone who thought they could operate outside the rules, whether by opening mail, stealing and screaming, or stealing flowers and threatening to sue. In every case, the person being wronged didn't just get mad, they got strategic. One used the law, one used coincidence and professional integrity, and one used landscape design as a boundary. The lesson's the same. Entitlement relies on the expectation that you won't push back. When you do, calmly, clearly, and with consequences, the power shifts instantly. And thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.